Back in the 1950s, the five sons of John D. Rockefeller, who clearly was a sociopath, the robber baron, he was obsessed with internationalism, and he was obsessed with the idea that we needed to have one world government, essentially, where the elite, like him, could manage the world and do their trade with no limits, and have the little people just do whatever work he needed them to do. Mm-hmm. And he taught his sons well. So his five sons in the 1950s, they set up the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, that we need to shape a new world order in all its aspects: political, spiritual, financial, etc. I mean, they wrote it all down in the Brothers Fund initiation. It's all published. So they said what they were doing, and after 70 years, they're well on their way to getting it. They also knew that they would not get it within their lifetime, and they didn't have a problem with that. They knew it would take like a half century, maybe a century, and that didn't bother them. They're not like ordinary people who focus on things next week, next month, maybe next year, maybe 10 years. They focus on things that will come to fruition long after their death, but their sons and their children will take over the dynasty. So they're long gamers in an extreme way. But to give an example, they identified in the 1950s climate disaster as an opportunity. So that was before there was any scientists in the room. So for the next 50, 60, 70 years, through myriad organizations and funding activist groups, they got us to a stage where 90% of the climate scientists agree there's a catastrophe.
To the Weather Channel. I watch a lot of cable news.
Now, hold on just a minute. I'm not done. And CNN has taken a very strong position on global warming that it is a consensus. Well, there is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and yes, it has become a big political point of the Democratic Party and part of their platform, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific, but the science is on my side. There is no global warming.
What I do wonder is when you see the government, when you see NASA, when you see other institutions say that 97% of climate scientists agree, do you think they're making it up? What I don't understand is how you square that.
Well, that's a manipulated figure, and let me explain it to you. The government puts out about $2.5 billion directly for climate research every year. It only gives that money to scientists who will produce scientific results that support the global warming hypothesis of the Democrat Party position. So they don't have any choice. If you're going to get the money, you got to support their position. Therefore, 97% of the scientific reports published support global warming. Why? Because those are the ones the government pays for, and that's where the money is. It's real simple. But that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't make it true. That only makes it bought and paid for. The money goes in circles.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to refute you on the facts.
That's the truth.
I'll simply say that the vast majority...
Please stand back from this issue and let the two sides be on the air. There are 31,000 scientists who have signed a petition that says it is not valid, that my position is correct, and we'll keep battling.
But that took 50 or 60 years, and the setting up of the UN IPCC and the setting up of the Club of Rome, which was set up by Italy's richest man, who was also a friend of David Rockefeller and in Chase Manhattan Bank with him. So all these organizations were set up with a long game goal. And the key thing is they identified climate disaster.
Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future.
Global pandemics.
There is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that. But also there will be a surprise outbreak, and I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
This portion of CBS This Morning, sponsored by Pfizer.
Good Morning America is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch, sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download, brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning, sponsored by Pfizer.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Say free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? These delicious fries? Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this? If this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination.
Global financial crashes. What was the other one? Global macro terrorism fears. They were the four primary opportunities in order to persuade the little people that they needed a global government. So they identified global issues. Now, the COVID was just the perfect kind of scam in order to rapidly accelerate progress. So they'd made a certain amount of progress with climate. They'd made other progress with swine flu. They got pretty close to getting a worldwide hysteria, and then it collapsed because the press around the world was still too free. I think I heard that 300 different news outlets all over the globe together began to question swine flu and realized that nothing was really going on. And the whole thing collapsed in a mess. Now, since swine flu 2009, they identified that weakness, the free press. And when it came to COVID 2020, that problem was completely fixed. 2006, Rand Corporation, a military industrial complex outfit, did a risks report looking forward to 2020s. And they basically called out that the biggest risk they thought that might happen or could happen was possibly a global pandemic. And they noted that what would need to be done and what would happen, and Rockefeller lockstep scenario 2010, all published, they're an absolute facsimile of what happened. And what these reports, huge reports and scenarios said, was the governments would have to stamp down with authoritarianism to control the people and control, this 2006 Rand report, control misinformation. Because misinformation would be the big problem. Apparently, according to Rand and the WEF, who they did the report for in 2006, misinformation. People think that nonsense only came up in 2020 to stop correct people questioning what the hell was going on. So they called it misinformation. But no, 2006, it was all laid out in the Rand report. So they basically identified all of the weaknesses that would undermine the scams of the future. And they worked on them for over a decade before COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I often explain to people, the World Economic Forum since 1993 have indoctrinated 4,000 young global leaders. So Bill Gates and a bunch of other reprobates were the first crew in 93. And then the Prime Minister of Ireland was in many years ago, Trudeau, Ardern, Macron, yada, 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 4,000 young global leaders. And over those 30 years, they were all helped move up the ladder really fast because of the enormous influence of WEF. So they got all these people in place, and all of them did actual exercises over the last 10 or 15 years on like 2020 and beyond, sustainable development, pandemics. They all did the whiteboarding about how they as leaders would deal with these problems, right? So they were fully indoctrinated. So just to finish on that, Kelly, what happened when COVID came? It was like Pavlov's dogs or that Manchurian candidate. Basically, all these leaders around the world and all the CEOs of the media, they all looked and said, this is what we were all scenario planning for. Here it is. And they stepped right into role.
This is satanic on a massive level. And you look at Borla and you look at, the fact that they knew they were doing this, which if you read the Pfizer papers, you cannot conclude otherwise. And this 13 to 20% drop in live births. So I guess what I'm trying to say is they tried to kill us. They tried to wipe us out. They tried to sterilize us. A lot of people died. There's going to be horrible struggles with fertility, but we survived and the truth came out.
It's become clear that people in this country and globally have been steamrolled. It is also clear that it has been coordinated globally. It is also clear that it has been integrated, not just over 6 months, not just over 2.5 years, but it has been planned over decades. The changes to legislation in this country were done so that they could control doctors and people. But the people are waking, and it's thanks to people like Dr. Altman and all the presenters here today, thanks to people like Senator Babette and Craig Kelly. We know and we knew that this is all bullshit and that we've been had. But we are going to hound you down, the people that are guilty. We are going to hound you down and hold you accountable, and we will expose your global agenda so that the people of Australia can be free in the future. Because I love my kids and I'm looking forward to my grandkids. And we are going to save this country.